It's been quite the couple of months here, and I know that a lot of my students have felt the stress of online, offline again, all of these different things that they're going through in schools. I know that I've felt stressed the last couple of months. I wonder why. And when we're met with that level of stress over a long period of time, I think that it starts to affect us in different ways. And sometimes what it can do for us as teachers is that it makes us feel as though we have to have all the answers, and that in order to create an amazing lesson, we have to be able to provide all the instruction and to make everything right. So, today, I invite you to release some of those expectations of yourself, some of the delivery expectations of, oh, I've got to make this a lesson amazing. I've got to, and in order to do that, I've got to plan, and do, and provide. I've got an idea for you. Today, we're going to be talking about how we can help our students help themselves. This gives us an opportunity to refocus our energy away from providing instruction and towards encouraging inquiry. So today we're going to be going through specific questions that we can use to guide our students through the learning process so that we can create productive lessons, that we can help them release stress and anxiety. And I really think that you're going to enjoy these questions today. So if you're joining me here right now, please be sure to say hello, or if you're dropping by later on after the broadcast is over, hop on into the comments. Let me know where you're tuning in from and be sure to say hi. I see we've got two people tuning in already. We've got Elizabeth and Christy. Nice to catch you both here live. And so let's get to the goods today, shall we? We're going to be talking about how we can refocus our energy. Take a deep breath and help our students help themselves. If you're new here to the broadcast, welcome. My name is Sara Campbell. I am a business strategist and mindset coach for music studio owners and online music education experts just like yourself. And I go live here every Wednesday where we talk about different strategies that we can use inside of our music studio businesses, how we can get the mindsets in place in order for those strategies to work. And we talk about something that I like to call awesometicity. And what that means is showing up as your awesome and authentic self, because there's nobody like you. And if we can show up in those two places, magic happens. So if you are here, please be sure to say hello. Hey, Julie. Julie's about to go teach. Nice to see you. Good morning, Kathy. And good morning, Karen. And Karen's starting a new student today. That is exciting. Karen, I think that these questions will be really powerful for your brand new student. So we're going to get into those questions in just a moment. We love to learn out loud here on the broadcast. So if you find something that is valuable to you, make sure that you give us a hashtag takeaway and drop that value into the comments so that we can know what was valuable to you. That way we can learn out loud and learn together. And it just makes it a really great way for those who are joining later on after the broadcast is over. When they see all those takeaways in the comments, they know what to listen for. It's good stuff. Hey, Carrie just started 2 new students this morning. They were great. Oh, that is fantastic. Congratulations, Carrie. Hey, if you have a teacher friend who you think would benefit from listening to this broadcast today, could you do me a favor and let them know about it right now? The more the merrier, right? The more the merrier. And I see people meeting in the comments. Oh, we've got friends meeting. Yeah, bring in your friends. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so I do have today's very brief show notes set up inside of the Savvy Sara bot. Some of you received notifications for the broadcast. If you got a messenger notification for today's broadcast, let me know if that worked for you. If you would like to get set up with messenger notifications for the next broadcast, here's what you're going to do. You're going to give me a notify below, and the Savvy Sara bot will message you here on Messenger. And what she'll do is she's going to give you a recap of the questions that I'm going through today. She's also going to give you a way to opt in for the messenger notification next week. You'll have to opt in every week due to the new Book of Face rules with messenger automation. So just make sure you do that little extra clicky thing and you'll be set up just perfect. Okay, good. Yay. I see that Lisa said the notifications worked and Karen got it too. Awesome. So glad. Okay, let's get into today's topic. Helping our students help themselves. Refocusing our energy during lesson time so that we can encourage inquiry, exploration, and autonomy, so that our students can start taking control of their own learning process. Our idea with this, right? The concept is one day your student's not going to take lessons anymore. And we hope that when that day comes, it doesn't mean that they're going to stop singing or stop playing. And so what we're trying to do with these questions is to foster this type of environment that encourages exploration. And so when they don't have a teacher next to them, they're able to figure things out and to teach themselves, right? Because that's the true ultimate goal. The ultimate goal of being a music teacher is that our students will become their own teachers. So let's get into, I've got 5 points that I'm going to go over today. And there are 2 questions that you're going to learn to ask. And I'm going to talk about why these questions are important and how we can make sure to include them inside of our lesson structures. So here we go. The first little step that we have to do here is that we need to shift out of advice mode. And this is kind of tricky because when we're in a lesson and a student is playing, let's say that they're playing a passage and they get to a part and it gets like kind of sticky and things aren't going so great. It can be super tempting to jump in and say like, oh, okay, now here's what we need to fix, and to tell them exactly how to do it. If you've ever been guilty of that, raise your hand or raise 2 hands. Now, of course, there are times when providing that advice and that instruction is super important. We wouldn't want our students to flounder around trying to find something and getting frustrated. Not the deal here, right? But what we do want to do is to offer an opportunity for students to discover the solutions themselves before we pop in with that advice. So the first step is to make the conscious decision that you're going to step out of advice mode for a moment, and that instead you're going to go into inquiry mode. When I was in college, when I attended Westminster College back in 2000, one of the classes that we had to take was called inquiry. And at first I was like, oh, this class is just like, I don't get it. I don't understand the point of this class. I just want to take my music classes. But what that class taught is how to develop an inquiring mind, how to get curious about things and to ask questions and to explore. And so that's what we want to encourage our students to do. So here's the first question that we're going to be asking. Oh, and before we get to this, I'll say, oh, yay. Christy says, I love this so much. I always tell my students that I'm training them to be independent learners. That's a fabulous phrase, Christy. Thank you so much for sharing that. Hey there, Ashley. Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay, so there we go. Hashtag takeaway. Once we step away from advice mode, what we're going to do is we're going to ask this really important question. You ready for this, guys? Aw, somebody just had a sad face. I'm sorry that things made you sad. I hope that the next thing will make you happy. Here's the question. What's the real challenge here for you? What's the real challenge? These guys are too high today. We're going to adjust those as we go. What is the real challenge here for you? So when a student comes to that passage and things are tricky, some stuff falls apart. I'm thinking of a student that I was working with yesterday, and he reached a point in the piece that he was working on, and things just started to unravel a little bit. And so after he was done with that particular section, rather than jumping right into, okay, here's how we're going to fix this, right? I asked him the question, I said something first. I said, oh, this was going really, really well. And then we reached this one section of the piece, and that is a tough section. So I validated the fact that this was tough, right? I told him, this is a tough section of the piece. And then I asked him, what do you think the real challenge is here for you? And when we ask that question, the one thing that we have to remember is that there might be a moment of silence. So we're going to get comfortable with that silence. Allow them to sit back and think. What was the challenge here for me? What was it that was causing that passage to fall apart? And he came up with a couple of different ideas pretty quickly. He said, I feel like I'm not aware of where the vocal line is. This was a pop piece, a pop song that was a piano arrangement. I feel like I'm losing where the vocal line is. Okay, good. All right, that would be important, because if we don't know where the vocal line is, we've really lost our sense of melody. And then he said, and because I don't know that, it makes my left hand feel unsure about the beat, unsure about the pulse. And so it gave us an opportunity to go, all right, great. Knowing that, let's look at those two areas and examine what we can do to make that feel better and more secure. So we come in with this, what's the real challenge here for you, right? We ask that question. And then there's a second question that we can add to this, and it just like totally blows things out of the water. And here it is. The second question that we can ask is what we call the awe question. So let's get specific about what we mean by the awe question. The awe question stands for, and what else? Ooh, and what else is challenging here for you? So when you have a student and you ask them what's the real challenge here for you, and then they tell you what that is, or maybe they say something that you're like, okay, yeah, that is a challenge, but it's not, in your nuggets, that that's not the real challenge here. You're going to ask again. You're going to say, okay, whoops, I lost it. There it go. And what else is challenging here for you? And they're going to tell you. I might sit there for a second, a little quiet. They're going to tell you what that other challenge is. So once we kind of uncover those two answers, it allows us to start the journey of exploration and really having them become autonomous over figuring out what is it that happened here that went wrong, right? So I can give another example of this in teaching voice lessons. So I have a student who was working on a piece a couple of weeks ago, and there were some passages where she was definitely running out of air at the end of the phrase. And so she was aware of that. And I asked her, what do you think the challenge is here for you? And she thought about it. Because I could have said, okay, yes, we need to talk about where we're breathing. We need to talk about how we're spending our air, making sure that we're not over breathing, under breathing, finding that perfect balance. I could have jumped right into advice mode, but I allowed her the opportunity to examine what she was doing. And so we did the passage again with the idea in mind that she was going to really examine and feel for what was happening. And what she realized in trying to identify what the challenge was is that it had to do with the amount of effort she was using at the very top of the phrase. She was losing a lot of air. And so she actually was taking a good enough breath, but the energy that she was spending at the top was so great that she was losing the air by the time she got to the end. And so she came to the realization that this is what I need to fix without me telling her this is what needs to happen. So that realization can be so much more powerful if they can come to it themselves, right? So it's that idea of shifting out of advice mode, right? Shifting out of advice mode, giving yourself the opportunity to, giving your students, I should say, the opportunity to explore and figure things out. Ah, yeah. See, Christy has a good takeaway. The awe question gets them thinking deeper. Exactly. Exactly. So now let's examine a couple things that like might come up while you're starting to experiment with these questions. Now, I know that for myself, when I first started thinking about those questions, I'm like, oh man, this feels like lazy teaching. Right? I'm making them do the work for me. And I use these. Those of you who coach one-on-one with me or coach in groups, you know that I use these questions. So, and I remember struggling with this, like, ooh, does this make me a lazy coach? Does this? But no, it doesn't, right? We need to know, we need to trust that this information is going to be useful. It's going to be useful because it's allowing them to pause and to examine what they're doing and to build awareness. Because building that awareness is what is going to allow us as students to start really understanding, okay, I need to be looking for these things. I need to be listening for these things. I need to be feeling for these things. Because if we don't have that awareness, if we can't build that self-awareness, then when we step away from taking lessons, we're never going to be able to fix anything on our own. We're always going to need somebody else to observe and to tell us and to advise us. So know, you have to trust and know that this question will be useful. Ooh, this is a great question. Katya just posed, what to do if the student is very young? This question, these questions are great for young students as well. And I found that because with like the younger age groups, they're already naturally curious. We tend to lose that curiosity and to look for more instruction the older that we get. I kind of think that that's a result of our current schooling systems because we are a teach to the test kind of society. But when we think about young students, a lot of what they are learning is through exploration and inquiry. And so for the young ones to ask them, let's say if they're playing even just a very simple like 3-note melody and they're having a hard time with it, we can guide them through that. What do you think the real challenge is here for you? And if that doesn't prompt something for them, we can say, do you think it might be, and then name something. Do you think it might be the counting? Is the counting hard? Do you think it might be how we're sitting at the piano bench? Does that feel kind of hard for you? And to ask them and prompt them, and as we start to give them ideas about what might be challenging, they're going to start identifying, oh, these are different areas that where I can build awareness. Yes, Leishan. Hey, friends. That profile picture is gorgeous. She says, trust. That is a huge takeaway. You have to trust your students for sure. 100%. We do have to trust our students that they know when things aren't working. And even if at the very beginning when we ask them what the challenge is, if they can't pinpoint what it is, that's okay. The gears are still turning and they're starting to think about what it is that is challenging for them. So we need to trust and know that this will be useful, right? Trust and know that this will be useful. And our fifth step here is to start getting clear about recognizing the time for advice versus the time for inquiry. So there will be a time after you've asked that question, and maybe that student is just, they are low on brain power that day, they are having a hard time observing, they're tired. They might need that little nudge. They might need a little sprinkle of advice to perk that inquiry up. And so we want to start recognizing, when does my student need me to tell them what to do versus when does my student need me to ask them about what will help them. So we have to take the time to figure it out, right? We have to trust that there will be a time for each of these. there will be a time for both of these. This is a yes and kind of moment. Okay, so let's before we get into, we're going to review through those 5 points real quick here. But before we get into that, I would love to know from you, those of you who are here right now live, or if you're watching this later on, what are some inquiry questions that you ask in your studio? Do you have a magic phrase or a question that you pose to your students that allows them to unlock that inquiry mode and to start owning their learning process? I would love, if you do, please share that with us here. I would love to shout that out on the broadcast. Oh, good. Laura says, allow time for inquiry. It might take a few more minutes than advice mode. 100%, it might take a few more minutes, but here's the cool part. When we discover the answer for ourselves, rather than getting the answer from somebody else, we've created a very strong connection to that thing that we've learned. Because we've taken the time to analyze, we've taken the time to question. And so when we are creating those learning pathways, we're carving that rut much deeper than just when somebody hands us a piece of advice and then we do it. If somebody hands us a piece of advice and we just do it, but we don't know why we're doing it, then we might forget that advice later on. And that results in us saying things like, slow down, or count out loud a million times during lessons. Oh, great. We've got some good questions that people are dropping here. Darla says, I asked my teen student, did you like your performance? She said no, and immediately began a beautiful performance. Ah, awesome. Christy says, I also asked, how do you think that went? Perfect. Excellent questions. Laura says, instead of saying, do you have any questions? I say, what questions do you have? Ooh, these are fabulous shifts. Isn't that excellent? Because if we just ask the question, do you have any questions? It's very simple for somebody to say no. But if we ask them, what questions do you have about this? What does it do? It puts them into that inquiry mode, right? Karen says, I learned this in my education training in the 70s in college. It's called the discovery technique. Fantastic. Kathy says, this also builds their self-confidence. Elizabeth says, if you were me, how would you start teaching this piece? How would you suggest I take it to the next level or rock star level? Ooh, I love that verbiage. That's fabulous. Thank you. That was great, guys. So let's review through the content today real quick. We're going to, whoops, my screen's not letting me do things. All right. When your student walks in and they're feeling kind of tired, or, you can tell that they've had a tough time, or they just feel like they're not really in that learning zone, or if you're feeling, stressed or tired yourself and feeling like you have to do all the things and teach all the things and, be there with all 100% of the advice, here's an invitation. I invite you to take a step back, to refocus your energy, and to start teaching your students how to help themselves. And here's how we do it. We do it with these following questions, right? And these following little bits. The first thing that we have to do is that we've got to shift out of advice mode. We have to give ourselves permission to step back and to allow the inquiry process to occur. Then we ask this all-important question. What's the real challenge here for you? We wait. There might be a pause, there might be some silence, but allow your student the opportunity to think about that question and to answer it. And when they arrive at an answer, ask them again. And what else? Ask the awe question. Bring that into the discussion. You can keep going with the and what else multiple times in order to gently draw out those ideas from your student. during this process, you are going to have to know and trust that this will be useful for your student. If you've never done this before, it does feel kind of weird because it feels like we're just like sitting back in our chair, leaning back and going, okay, you do the work, right? But trust that this is going to be useful for your student. And it's also going to be useful for you because they may give you an answer that you didn't expect. So give yourself permission to sit back and listen. Recognize then that there will be time for advice and time for inquiry, and sometimes there will be time for both. So give yourself permission to start taking a little step back and thinking about when do I need to jump in and help? When do I need to step back to help? So I hope that you all found this useful today. If you found this useful, please let me know. I enjoy this topic. It's something that I'm really passionate about, being able to figure out how do we best coach our students, right? And how do we best coach ourselves? Those questions can be definitely pointed back at ourselves 100%. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. I will be back next week on Wednesday at 10 a.m. 10 a.m.? No, 12 p.m. noon Eastern Standard Time. And is it Standard Time or Daylight Time? I don't know. We just changed times. Eastern. I'll be here at noon where we can talk about business, mindset, and being awesome and authentic inside of our studios. I appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed today's broadcast, please be sure to pass it along to a friend. Let them know that we are here. And I will see you next week. In the meantime, stay savvy and stay you, because there's no one else like you and you're pretty dang awesome. We'll see you next week.